This video is how to do one style of baby booties. There's many different ways that they can be done. This is just the one that I like to do. The base is always the same no matter which booty you do. The only difference is your top. Like in this case, this is a lacy top. I added a chained cable through the eyelets so you can pull it tight. This is my favorite one. This is a star stitch, but this part is still the same. Then there's also the standard 1x1 rib, which is very popular, and this one is called a mock rib. It looks like a rib, but it doesn't stretch out quite as much. But this is the part that this video is going to cover. In the first part, it talks about a make one. A make one is an additional increase that you can do on the booty to add additional stitches to allow for the front of your foot or toe or whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to show in more detail how to do that make one. There's two types. There's one called the standard increase where you knit in the front and back of the same loop. When you do that, when you get one of these makeshift little purl stitches, and I really don't like to see those little bumps on the front of my booties, so I do the make one, which is right here. If you look real close, you can see this one's kind of twisted from the side, and you can see there's nothing below it. And this is the other version where you knit it through the front loop, where here you knit through the back loop. They both work very well. I don't like to do this, and for some reason I get an extra hole there when I do mine, an extra bigger hole. But it's entirely up to you which version you want to do. So first I'll show you the increase, which is a very popular way of increasing. In most cases it doesn't matter if there's that little pearl looking stitch. You would knit in the front loop and rotate around into the back loop of the same stitch. And that gives you your increase and that little fake pearl right there. I'll do another one. I'll skip one. Now you knit in the front loop, rotate around, and knit in the back loop of the same stitch. And there's your increase again with your little pearl. Now for the booties, we do what's called a make one. On your abbreviations, it's the letter M with the number 1 next to it. You pull your needles apart and you'll see these little horizontal bars. That's what the make one is done, and that's where your increase is done. I like to put it on this way so the longer part of the stitch is facing forward, and then knit in the back loop. That causes it to twist. You can see how you got a little twist in there. I'll do another one. Okay, you can either pick it up with this needle and place it on, or you can just pick it up with this needle, whichever way you want to do it. Pick it up like that. It's the same thing. Just put the left needle in the front. Now sometimes I cannot knit in the back. This time I lucked out and I was able to. But I prefer that one over the other one. The other one, instead of going this way into your loop, you go from the back into your loop. And as you can see, it causes a different look. When you do it this way, you want to knit through the front loop. And see, that causes it to twist the other direction. I'll do another one for you. Let me get over a couple. So we're going to pick it up from the back side, and they're going to knit in the front loop. And that causes the other increase. One twist one way, one twist the other way. When you're making mittens, it's the nice way to do it, because one will cause your mitten to increase this way, the other causes your mitten to increase this way. So those are the two different make ones. Then of course you would knit back. Now if you accidentally picked it up this way and knitted through the front, as you can see, it makes a big hole. And you know you've made a mistake if you come up with a big hole. So when you put it here, you do not knit through the front, because you put your needle through the front. You do not knit through the front. If your needle's in the front, you knit through the back. If your needle comes up through the back, you knit through the front. So that's a good way to help remember where you're knitting. And you just finish across, and that gives you all your increases without that little pearl effect. So the next part of your booty, after you've got all your increases done, so you can see I got a little hole there and a little hole there for my increases. Sometimes I think I just pull it too tight. So the next part we're going to work on is getting this toe part. As you can see, it's an additional increase to do this. So we're going to start by knitting across the right side of the booty. I think it's the right side. And across the top of the toe. So that's a total of 24 stitches on this pattern. Now each pattern varies. You would use this video as more of a reference guide to show you what to do when and the different ways to do it. Most of these booties are exactly the same stitch count except for the top. The top is a little bit different, especially on the lacy one, because you need a few more stitches to complete the lace design. Okay, I need 24 stitches across the top here. That gives me 15 for the side, 9 for the toe, and 15 for the other side. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. I need 2 more. Okay, so that is the first row to set up for the toe, and the toe is going to come up through here. We're going to leave these hanging on the needle and these on the needle instead of putting them on a stitch holder. Just a little convenient way of doing it without having the extra pieces hanging. You turn your work and we're going to do what's called short rows, where we're only going to knit a selected amount of stitches, and in this case it's 9. And we're purling. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Then you turn your work and we're going to knit back on the same 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and you'll do that back and forth over those 9 stitches until you get the amount of rows required. Here's an example of that. There's where I've done the 9 stitches excuse me, over the rolls. So the next part is we're going to join this side, the side of the toe. We're actually doing this row here. We're going to knit here, pick these stitches up along the toe, knit across the front of the toe, pick up the stitches on the side, and then knit across here. So we had to cut the thread in order to start over here. So grab yourself your thread again. If I can find the end, there it is. Okay, we're going to knit across the 15 on the side that have been left. Oh, I forgot to tell you, after you get these done, because they're on 2 separate needles, you want to slide all these stitches back onto your left hand needle. Once you get them all back on the needle, it'll look like this. Forgot that, and that's a very important step. Okay, so let's pick up our stitches. This one's really tight. There it is. We're going to knit the first 15. One more makes 15. So now we're on the side of the toe. We want to pick up 4. I like to pick them up in the little knots. That's just my favorite place. Some ladies like to come in a complete roll and pick up the stitches. Whichever you're most comfortable with. Either one works perfectly. So there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we're going to knit the 9 across the top of the toe. Now that one's loose because that's where we cut the thread. So I just pull it tight. Now we're going to do 4 down this side because that's what this pattern calls for. Some patterns call for more. You just have to follow what the pattern says. There's 3, There's number 4. Now we're going to knit the other 15 on the other side of the booty. So at this point we're ready to start the sole. The sole is completely done in knit stitches, so it's all garter, along with some knit 2-togethers to cause shaping, because you definitely want it to be round and fit the baby's foot as comfortably as possible. So let's get this last one done. Okay, there we go. So now we're ready to do the next part. There's the toe and the others, and we didn't use a single stitch holder. We used our needles as stitch holders. So the final part is this section here. Like I said, it's just all knit stitches. You do a knit 2 together here. This is going to cause this curve, and the curve is what makes the booty lay so nice and round this way. And the other knit 2 togethers we do along the side help make this kind of form a little softer, so it's not so rigid and square. So you would and you do that for the amount of rows it calls for. You knit 2 together here, you knit 2 together here, you have one here and one here, and then you do a few regular rows and you do another knit 2 together, knit 2, knit 2 together, knit 2 together. And you just go back and forth following the pattern. This is the last row. This is the bind off row. It's a little bit different from a normal bind off because I'm adding some additional knit 2 togethers in order to make it nice and round. So you start at the beginning like you do the other rows, you knit 2 together. Now we're going to bind off 13. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Now we're at the toe area. As you can see right here, it's forming the little angle. Oh, forgot to bind it off. Knit 2 together and bind that one off. Then we're going to bind off 7 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now we do the knit 2 together to complete the other side of the toe. Bind it off. Now we're going to bind off to the last 2 stitches, because the last 2 is the same thing again. It'll be a knit 2 together, and then you bind off the knit 2 together and finish off your work. Your booty will be completed at that time, and it'll be time to sew it up. What I like to do after I sew it up is to take 1 or 2 Kleenexes and stuff it down on the bottom of the booty. That gives it a nice rounded look for a presentation when you get ready to give it as a gift. It just makes it so it's not flat. A flat booty just is not appealing. It doesn't make the ladies go, oh, like a one that's filled out. Okay, now the last 2, we're going to knit those 2 together, bind off, and then we're going to bind off can't even pick it up with my fingers. There it is. Bind off the tail. Now when you first started your work, the pattern says to leave about a 24-inch tail. And I always put it on one of these little bread wrapper connectors. They really work great as a stitch holder. You would use that yarn to sew it together, because if you use this one to sew it together, you'd either have to sew this way and connect and sew this way, or sew this way, connect and sew this way. By saving yourself a tail at this end, that you make it so you can sew all the way around and complete the booty. So once you get your booty completed, see, it just doesn't look as pretty. It's very flat. I just like to stick a little tissue in kind of fluffs it up a little bit. And it makes it more rounded and appealing. And there you go.